O God, beyond all praising, we worship you today and sing the love amazing that songs cannot repay. For we can only wonder at every gift you send, at blessings without number, and mercies without end. We lift our hearts before you and wait upon your word. We honor and adore you, our great and mighty Lord. Welcome to the Voice of Reason. Mr. Director, did you know that between 1877 and 2021, 18 times, yes, 18 times, National Guard had been deployed to Chicago, Illinois. And we all know the original Summer of Love that took place during the 1968 Democrat convention in the city of Chicago and the lawlessness that surrounded the area, and controversial at the time. But then the boss, otherwise known as Mayor Richard J. Daley, authorized martial law, shoot to maim, shoot to kill, to stop the anarchists and other allies who came together on the far left, and some just moderately liberal compared to today's Antifa, compared to today's Black Lives Matter, and the radical paid agitators that are going into cities like Chicago, like Portland, like Los Angeles, Memphis, and New Orleans, amongst others. But there has been a history in the United States of presidents authorizing the National Guard in order to stop these kind of lawless situations. I'll give you 7 other examples tonight on the Voice of Reason detailing United States presidents activating troops on American soil, from the designation at Little Rock to Martin Luther King's Selma to Montgomery March right here in Alabama, to the Cuban refugee crisis. These are the major moments when United States presidents have deployed troops in America, according to the History Channel at history.com. Now, the National Guard is a unique component in America's military and United States forces over our near 250 years of existence. There are 54 National Guard units based in each of the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, Guam, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Most recently, we saw that National Guard activated in the federal city. Now, it traces its origins all the way back to state militias mustered in the 17th century. So really, even before the foundation of our country, the National Guard existed. And at the start of the Civil War in 1861, Connecticut became the very first state, in fact, the Constitution state, to call its militia National Guard by the title we know it as today. Now, the 1903 Militia Act and the National Defense Act of 1916 codified the National Guard as a reserve force that could be activated by both state governors and by the President of the United States, including overseas engagements and at times of war. So in the vast majority of domestic deployments, the National Guard has been activated by state governments to keep the peace and restore order in the event of natural disasters or civil unrest, as we have seen several in the last couple of years. Now, here are 7 of the most historically significant deployments. So number 1 being the Civil War. There was no National Guard at the time of the Civil War by its same name, but when war broke out in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln activated the state militias of the Union to fight secessionist states of the Confederacy. According to the United States Constitution, Congress has the power to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. And through the Militia Acts of 1792, Congress authorized the president to federalize state militias in order to stop these insurrections and to enforce the law. And perhaps most famously, George Washington, our first president, our father of this great nation, federalized militias in Pennsylvania surrounding the states to suppress the Whiskey Rebellion. Now, Lincoln used that same authority during the Civil War. In April of 1861, Lincoln federalized state militias of the Union in order to muster a combined fighting force of 75,000 men at the start of the war. Number two, and perhaps many of you remember because you were around during this time, the desegregation of Southern schools, something that was pivotal right here in Dixieland, Alabama. Back in 1954, the landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court, Brown versus the Board of Education, declared that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. But it took years for southern states to enforce that integration due to the Jim Crow era and the KKK, both brought to you signed, sealed, delivered by the Democrat Party, enhanced by an even radical wing known as the Dixiecrats under then Governor George Wallace. Now, in 1957, the integration of all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, became the first true test of desegregation, known as the Little Rock Nine. Brave group of 9 black students chose to integrate Central High. But on the first day of class, Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus called in the Arkansas National Guard to block the students from entering the high school, saying it was for their own protection, claiming that. Now, a federal judge ordered that the integration of Central High School move forward, and the next day, Little Rock police officers escorted the Little Rock Nine to school, but were met with an angry mob of white protesters. Frustrated with the state and local response, President Dwight D. Eisenhower deployed 1,200 Army troops to Little Rock and put them in charge of the 10,000 Arkansas National Guardsmen already active on duty. And under this federal order, the same National Guardsmen who blocked the integration of Central High School 3 days earlier now escorted the Little Rock Nine safely to class on September 25th of 1957. That was not the last time a president would do that in regards to desegregation. In fact, it was Democrat John Fitzgerald Kennedy in 1962 activating the National Guard in Mississippi in order to enforce integration at the University of Mississippi. 1 year later, Kennedy deployed the Alabama National Guard to integrate the University of Alabama against the wishes of Governor George Wallace. Now made famous also by Forrest Gump, a great film that I'm sure many of you have seen, where they superimpose the image of Tom Hanks' character, Forrest Gump, picking up the books of those black students that dropped them, walking into that moment, a very famous moment in American history. Number 3, Martin Luther King's march here in Alabama from Selma to Montgomery. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson clashed with Governor Wallace and federalized Alabama's National Guard troops to protect the lives of civil rights activists, including Martin Luther King Jr. himself. Now, on March 7th of 1965, hundreds of people gathered in Selma, Alabama, to begin a 3-day march in Montgomery, the state capital. Now, the march, organized by civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and the late John Lewis, who was a congressman from the 5th District of Atlanta, Georgia, was meant to draw attention to unjust laws that made it nearly impossible for black people to vote. As a result of that, John Lewis had his head bashed in on several occasions from a state police baton. The man could no longer drive as a result of that for the rest of his life. And although I personally disagreed with him, as he was very, very liberal during his tenure in the United States Congress, I very much admired and enjoyed reading his autobiography about this very march. And being a young student activist, something that inspired me to become a student activist, peacefully and patriotically standing up for the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights, and our founding documents that we see now under attack once again at America's college campuses. But as the peaceful marchers approached the Edmund Pettus Bridge outside of Selma, they were brutally attacked by those Alabama state troopers. And as I mentioned, John Lewis knowing very true what that name came to be, Bloody Sunday. Footage of the police violence was broadcast on live television, and horrified by the brutality authorized by the governor, George Wallace, President Lyndon Johnson, no fan necessarily of civil rights, at least initially, federalized the Alabama National Guard and sent additional United States Army troops to Selma. 3 weeks after Bloody Sunday, the march began again. And on September 25th, 1965, more than 2,000 marchers safely arrived in Montgomery, where King declared from the steps, "No tide of racism can stop us." So those are great examples of what's happened in American history. The Detroit Uprising of 1967, also the Guard activated in that moment. When the riots were finally suppressed on July 27th, 43 people had been killed, 342 wounded, and more than 1,400 buildings burned to the ground. Number 5, the riots that followed the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th of 1968, a tipping point for many black communities in America. It created what was known as the Long, Hot Summer after the death of civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. Again, President Johnson addressing the nation and urged calm, but violence ripping through and eroding American life in 100 American cities. 100. I mean, this was part of the reason, on top of a very unpopular Vietnam War, as to why the 36th president did not seek re-election in 1968. It was truly an end to his political career and the failures he had in office. This included Baltimore, Maryland, to Cincinnati, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Wilmington, Delaware, and yes, the federal city of Washington, D.C., where the president activated 1,750 National Guard troops in the nation's capital, in addition to 12,000 federal troops. And in Delaware, like we're seeing in Illinois and in California and New York today, Governor Charles Terry refused to pull the National Guard out of Wilmington once the initial rioting started. Instead, armed guardsmen patrolled the black neighborhoods of Wilmington for 9 months, and the longest military occupation of an American city in history. The Cuban refugee crisis of 1980 also led to this response. The U.S. Coast Guard, accustomed to policing boat traffic from Cuba, switched to a search and rescue role, assisting the more than 5,000 boats ferrying Cuban refugees for more than 5,000 boats coming into the United States of America. And most recently, the 1992 Los Angeles riots. I'm sure most of you do remember that. In 1991, Americans watched in horror as bystander video footage showed 4 white Los Angeles police officers beating unarmed black motorist Rodney King on the side of the road. But the real shock came a year later when all 4 of those LAPD officers were acquitted. As news spread of the not guilty verdict, black neighborhoods across South and Central Los Angeles erupted into anger. They exploded with chaos, Molotov cocktails, gut-wrenching mirror of King's videotape beating while truck driver named Reginald Denny was pulled out of his vehicle and nearly killed by rioters, as that was all recorded. So President George H.W. Bush, invoking the Insurrection Act to federalize nearly 6,000 California national troops, also sending in FBI SWAT teams and 4,500 soldiers. More than 60 people died in the 1992 riots, and property damage exceeded $1 billion. So why am I bringing up all these details? Because 60 people died in 1992. As awful as the LA riots were, you can have that in a weekend or 2 weekends in Chicago, Illinois, in black neighborhoods, and no one cares about it. Only very few commentators have even discussed this for years. I have to tip my hat to Sean Hannity, who's done so on a regular basis for the last 20 years. Otherwise, these neighborhoods have been ignored. And otherwise, we see illegal criminal aliens who are now foreign terrorist organizations, thanks to President Trump's distinction back at the beginning of the second term of Tren de Aragua, border cartel, also MS-13, who are raping and pillaging and killing the most innocent among us, all preventable crime. So Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker really have no legs to stand on. If they're so against this, then go back into history and see where these other National Guard and troops have been federalized in order to protect America's cities. And if you disagree, feel free to write in if you wish to opine. Feedback at rsbn.tv. We have a fun show for you tonight. Let's be honest, when is it not a fun show here on The Voice of Reason? But part 2 of going into Opelika, Alabama to visit the Burgers and Badges event. And I had the opportunity to ride the Opelika Express. Here comes Conductor Doug on the Railway Express of Opelika, Alabama. And you can hear that horn go as the kids and family members enjoying a gorgeous day in Auburn, Alabama. The Rocky Brook Rockets.
Go Dogs! War Eagle!
We're hearing a lot of celebrations from Go Dogs to War Eagle. It's all about events here in Opelika, Alabama. I'm going to jump on that train in a moment to just test it out since I'm trying to get this new gig as, you know, the city fixer-upper, if you will, just riding the trains to make sure they're on time for you. In addition to that, we'll see all of the expert opportunities for you to get involved in your community right here in Auburn, Opelika, Alabama. And we're with the conductor, Doug Long, today. Sir, what does it take to get certified to drive this train in the park?
Let me think about that. Pretty much know-how and the willingness to do it.
Amen. And this is the Badge and Brews badge off and cook off today. How long has this been going on in the park?
For a couple of years, this is my first year working it, but it has been going on for a couple of years. And I'm not really sure exactly who's going to be winning today.
Do you have a preference between the fire and the police? Who cooks a better burger?
I'm going to say the fireman. Okay. Because cooking, fire, I mean...
kind of goes hand in hand.
Right.
A lot of common sense. I think I'm going to jump on this train and see how you're driving, if you don't mind.
You can do that. Hop on. We're about to go.
And in my part-time role as city inspector, it seems like the trains are running on time in Opelika, Alabama. And as we can see here, too, we have a young firefighter in the caboose of this train. Your thoughts, sir, on the burgers and the celebration? I think he's speechless because there's a rivalry in the family. We'll see you soon. We're with Ben Google Bass. Google, your nickname, sir. Tell us about the fine organization that you've brought together here for the badges, the brews. It's a competition between firemen and police officers today.
That's correct. I'm with the Punishers, LEMC. We're all law enforcement, first responders, military, or like-minded individuals. We're a very large organization. We're worldwide. Last year, we tried to support the community in everything they got, from autism, Down syndrome, burger wars, anything in the community, we're involved in it, trying to promote. Our motto is in service to others. And that being said, we try to give back to the community as the community does for us.
And we're seeing that implemented today in your vest, in your displaying of support for the firemen, with the badges, with the police officers backing the blue and the red, as well as Bikers for Christ and other emblems. This is worldwide, is it not?
Yes, we are worldwide. I was a firefighter for 15 years, but we have law enforcement, military, retired military. We're a great organization.
And tell us what your emblem means here for the specific city we're in today with the municipality of Opelika.
We are the Big Swamp chapter. Punishers, LEMC, Big Swamp. Big Swamp is the Indian meaning for Opelika.
You learn something new every day amongst this amazing community of Auburn Opelika and the people who are truly making a difference on a daily basis. How can people support the police and firemen in what is a very difficult environment still? I feel like the tide is changing, especially since, let's say, COVID, BLM riots, all of that stuff that was happening a few years ago. But how can the average citizen stand up for the law enforcement who really put their lives on the line every single day?
Stand behind them. Come out and support them. We do a trunk or treat at Lee County SO every year. Our chapter alone, the 2 years we've done it, have to give out over 100 pounds of candy to the community. So come out, support them. If they have burger wars, if they have trunk or treat, if they have touch a truck downtown Opelika, whatever, come out and support them.
And thank you so much for your support and for your selfless service. I really do mean that from the bottom of our hearts right here at RSBN.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
And ma'am, we're talking about the burgers and brew competition, the badges. I understand that it's the police versus the firefighters day. Do you have a choice?
Police, of course.
Back the blue.
Back the blue.
We're with the woman behind it all, Tippy Miller, Executive Director of the United Way in Lee County. It's burgers, it's badges. It's so much fun today with firefighters and police officers. And even though it's Ryder Cup weekend, this Ryder Cup shirt happens to really feature the blue and the red, so I was happy to showcase everything that we're proud to have as Americans. It's really about first responders, is it not, Tippy, who give so much selflessly to this community?
That's exactly right. And we find United Way, one of our missions is to fundraise, and then we put that money back into 25 different local organizations. And so many of our organizations are impacted by first responders, like the Domestic Violence Intervention Center, which we help fund, but obviously first responders are a big part of that organization as well.
And it's something that they commit themselves to take a day off on Saturday when they are so busy to begin with in order to put this on for the community. So how long has this been going on? And what kind of different organizations will reap the benefits of the police and the firemen having some fun out here today?
That's a great question. So we've done this event for about 5 or 6 years. And then as far as who receives the funding, it's 25 different organizations here in Lee County. So it's Food Bank, Red Cross, Child Advocacy Center, so many different organizations. It really spans a lot of different segments of our population, which we find so valuable. And the money stays right here with our neighbors here in Lee County. So we are so appreciative to the fire and police for giving up their time. But you know, it's great for our community to come out and enjoy a day at the park, enjoy each other's company. It's a safe atmosphere. It's a very family-friendly atmosphere, and that's what we're all about.
Special to have that in 2025. What's your message, especially for young people, as a professional involved in nonprofits and truly giving back yourself, Tippy? What is that main message for those who are looking at their career, especially if they're in college, we're right near Auburn University? How can they use their skills and their talents to give back to their neck of the woods?
You know, it doesn't matter what your occupation or your career is. You can give back to your community. You can find your passion. You can find what motivates you and what drives you, and you can spend your time in that area. Always call your local United Way and say, hey, I love children and I want to give back. What can I do? We love those kind of phone calls because we are all about people serving on their off time during work hours. And there's a lot of companies that have served community service hours built into their human resources. I know at Auburn University, each employee is given 8 hours to give back to the community. So we love for people to give back to the community, find their passion, and really pursue that. I think that's very important.
A special message from a very special lady, the United Way. Check them out. Is there a website people can look at Lee County specifically or throughout the entire organization?
You bet. We have a brand new website. So we love to point people to it. UnitedWayofLeeCounty.com. Super easy. All of our information is there. We are in the middle of our campaign. We're trying to raise $925,000, which will stay here in Lee County. So we are all about everybody checking us out.
Amazing stuff. Could we get a War Eagle on this football Saturday?
Yes, War Eagle. Thank you.
You might be wondering how we're getting all these amazing shots today on the train. It's because Mr. Director is running in the southern heat of beautiful Southeast Alabama. It's a lovely day to celebrate the police and the firemen who protect us on a daily basis, willing to wear that uniform in order to protect their communities, as we're on the Rocky Brook Rocket right here in Auburn, Alabama. Auburn and Opelika, all about family. We got a couple brothers here and a friend as well. Gentlemen, did you try the burgers today?
Yes, they're very good. They are extremely good.
We got the firefighter ones. I liked it. It was spicy.
They're very spicy.
So spicy. Was it the pimento cheese in them or that bacon onion jam that you enjoyed?
I didn't think they were too spicy, but that's just me.
I think the bacon was good.
Bacon.
I love that. So do you gentlemen, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's probably a big question you get as young men in the arena. Would you like to be a police officer or a firefighter one day?
No, I was planning on getting my college degree in the Air Force and then going and then serving a couple years in there, and then I was going to go be a private jet flyer and make a living off of that.
Still someone who wants to serve his community, serve his country. How about you, sir?
I want to be an engineer and build the robots.
I love that. That's fantastic.
I was planning to go in the NFL.
Yeah. Okay. What position do you play?
Running back and wide receiver.
Nice. Okay. So are you still in your season right now since we have football going on? Are you playing Peavy?
I'm playing football, like baseball.
Okay. Nice. I see your Auburn High School baseball shirt on. So what are some of your predictions? Are we fans of college football here? This is a big college football town.
I just moved here from Georgia, but I still think Auburn is a very good town. I was there for the homecoming game.
Love that. Fantastic.
I like watching football.
Yeah.
Well, same.
Yeah, I love it, right? Guys watching their football, eating their burgers. They love Auburn. They love Opelika. They love America. That's our future, my friend. Thanks for stopping by, you guys. I think in my next career, I will be a train inspector because I'm enjoying my time on this beautiful sunny day in Alabama. Thank you again, the hospitality of the Opelika Police Department and the Opelika Fire Department. Such a fun day we had recently out on the Opelika Express, and the wonderful residents of Greater Auburn, Opelika truly make the day something special. We had a great moment and a visit paid to us all the way from Georgia. No, not the state of Georgia next door, but the country of Georgia, once a former Soviet republic, to hear from our friend who resides in the free sunshine state of Florida, Jake Hoffman, who was observing recent elections, and we got his take on what was happening right on the ground in the gorgeous country of Georgia. Welcome to the Voice of Reason. Jake Hoffman, a friend here for the Voice of Reason. My friend, you have been in the country of Georgia observing their elections. Can you tell us about what's happening there and what I understand to be a very beautiful country?
Yeah, it's one of those places where if you say it to all of your friends in America, they go, wait, you're going to Georgia, like next to Florida. They can't really point to the country of Georgia on a map, but they've had national elections going on over this last weekend, and it's maybe not as big of a story in the United States because we tend to be so focused on America first, but it's a very consequential election to the EU, the direction that's going to be going maybe with the war in Ukraine and Russia and all these other things. It's a very key spot for different organizations that really care about the results of the leadership in these elections. So what I've seen so far is a pretty good election. They've really brought us over as international observers. We've been going around to polling stations all weekend. We've been driving from city to city. It's like I said, pretty exhausting weekend of a lot of work looking at all of these different polling stations and making sure everything is kind of up to snuff when it comes to election security. And I think that they are very interested in hearing my opinion as an American, as somebody who's, maybe been critical over American elections.
And you're really living a legacy of, it's been laid out by former President Jimmy Carter, God rest his soul, his wife as well, who, Rosalind, they would go and travel around the world trying to fight for free and fair elections, something that wasn't always seen. And now most Americans only really seeing what's happened in the world, given what took place in 2020. How will this Georgia election affect NATO, the European Union, potentially the end of the Russian-Ukraine conflict?
So you have a lot of representatives of the EU that are criticizing these elections. To me, that's kind of a direct insult. I've been here observing them. They're calling it fraudulent. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, it's run the same way that they do in the EU. It's actually, quite frankly, more secure than California. I was shocked walking into a polling place in the country of Georgia, where most people would not expect them to be so advanced. They've got, electronic voting machines for the second year in a row that are backed up by paper ballots. They actually ink your finger and do a fingerprint, which is an even increase in security from the ID that they ask for. So when you look at the comparison to California or one of these other blue states, with the way that they just have these lists of people, dirty voter rolls and all of these things, and Arizona, where maybe they're running out of ink. Nobody ran out of ink at any of the polling stations that we went to. So everything that you may have seen in the United States before, I didn't witness any of it, and I've talked with quite a few people from around the world about what's going on here. But the EU has an interest in making sure that this government here in Georgia, that they really were trying to encourage them to get into the war with Russia for the past so many years. They wanted a southern front to fight. So, and this is a country that, I'm 34 years old. They've gone to war with Russia twice now in the past, in my lifetime. So they don't want to go to war with Russia for a third time. But, some of the headlines you may see if you look into this kind of thing, it says they say, oh, they're pro-Russia. It's a Russia-backed government, all these other things. Everybody I've talked to is not huge fans of Russia here when you've gone to war with them twice in the past few decades. There's very little pro-Russia sentiment by any party.
Well, a sore topic as well, a former Soviet republic there in Georgia. And then also with this, Jake, have you seen not only the dipping of the thumb? We saw that in Iraq post the Iraq war with their first elections nearly 20 years ago. But also, are there paper ballots? Are there machines? Mm-hmm. What's happening on the ground? Very curious to know what kind of election takes place. Are there mail-in ballots that we see here in America?
Yeah, so they don't have mail-in ballots unless you are sick or elderly or something, and then they actually bring somebody to your home to help you bring the ballot back, as if you're disabled basically. But they don't do universal mail-in ballots by any means, and they also do they've got Smartmatic voting machines. So I'm not going to speak to how many people feel about voting machines, but to have criticism from the EU and the leadership in the EU over what the electronic systems that you also use and that you've clarified are some of the strongest election integrity laws in the EU and in the United States, the best election of all time. So if you're one of these people who are kind of on the left and you've been running elections very similar to this all over the world, then how can you criticize their election here in Georgia when they're doing something so similar to what all the other Western states do? And they actually keep paper ballots as a backup as well. They don't delete them.
Well, it's fascinating to see that what seems to be a very well-run process. Can you tell us about the culture as well? I actually had the privilege of working with two people from the country of Georgia, and they tell me you have to visit. It's just amazing people, delicious food, a great culture, and something that's really on the precipice of more economic buildup, as that's being driven ever since they've been a more free and fair society post the end of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, you have incredible growth here. I mean, if you look at the GDP numbers, their industry is growing. People that I've talked to before I went over here, they're like, why would you go to this Russian country, former Soviet country? It must be so desolate. It must be so, drab. And I'm over here and I'm like, this is better than many of the cities in the United States that I would rather be here enjoying myself. And they've got a lot of economic growth, and they've got great restaurants. I would encourage anybody to come to Georgia just solely for the food. I've eaten so much Georgian food that I didn't even know existed. So I've really been enjoying myself here in this country. And it is something to look at because of the fact that it's a very strategically important country, and it's locked in between Russia, which is at war. Russia still occupies 20% of Georgian land. If people can remember the 2008 wars that were taking place, so they're still, fought over land between Georgia and Russia there. On the bottom, you've got Armenia and Azerbaijan, who, Trump is saying, I ended everything, but it's been a pretty long ongoing war. So they're right below there. You've got Iraq and Iran very close by, and Turkey. So it's right there in the middle of all of these different conflicts. And I think that you see here what you see in America. You have almost a Georgia first. We don't want to go back to war for the third time in 3 decades. We want to focus on all of this new innovation that they've got coming in, the investment they've got coming into this country, and be their own country, their own culture. And it's extremely historic.
And Jake, would you say that there is a rise of right-wing populism happening in Georgia? We're seeing this really across the world, throughout Europe, and it's brought stronger economies. And it's been interesting because I would say the globalists, I can remember during the Brexit debate that, it would weaken the dollar, it would weaken the pound, and then in turn it actually strengthened both, at least temporarily. What do you see there in Georgia on the ground?
Well, again, if you were to read some of the media outlets, overseeing this whole conflict that's going on here regarding the election, they would tell you, try and make it black and white. It's pro-Russia and pro-EU. From what I've seen, everybody here is pro-EU. How they want to be part of the EU, are they going to be an EU member similar to Hungary, where maybe they don't go along to get along for everything that the EU wants to push? And same with Poland. And I think that there are people over in Brussels that may be worried that they had this nice, big toy box that everybody goes along, but now you've got such an increase in national sovereignty and decision making. And, in the case of Georgia, it feels to me like the average person just doesn't want to be sent to war. They are remembering their friends, family, and loved ones who went to war in 2008. That is not a long time ago. Everybody here that I'm talking to was alive for that. So they don't want to be a part of another war in Russia and Ukraine, and as much as the EU maybe wants to encourage it.
Well, especially for a UN deployment or even for an EU deployment, I can understand trade and wanting to bring that economic prowess, especially across strengthening the economic ties in Europe. But that is right, in Brussels and even throughout Belgium, throughout Germany at times, the power brokers seem to want to push that lever of, war might work out better for the powers that be, but what about the citizens of each respective sovereign nation? We're so happy, Jake, that you were able to take the time to tell us about these Georgian elections, and I pray you have a safe travel back home to the free sunshine state of Florida. Looking forward to seeing you again stateside.
Thank you. I look forward to being back there. A little warmer, just a long trip. That's all.
Godspeed, my friend. Thank you, Jake Hoffman.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to Jake Hoffman for gathering all that information on the ground, and perhaps we can learn a thing or two about our upcoming 2026 and 2028 elections. And you might recognize the next gentleman visiting the Voice of Reason. He has a gorgeous house on 30A, yes, right down there in the panhandle of Florida, and he stands for free speech. He refuses to allow Walton County, Florida, to get him down, and he recently paid tribute to our dear friend, the late, great Charlie Kirk. Welcome to the Voice of Reason. It's Martin Peavy from 30A. You might recognize his house down in Florida, displaying all the freedom of speech, and he has been a gentleman who's truly lived that American dream. Marvin, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your tribute to Charlie Kirk. What an amazing thing.
He was an outstanding guy. It's like I was talking to you before. He made a phone call to us 2 or 3 years ago and was thanking us for what we had done for President Trump, and I didn't really think much about it. And then I started watching him, and I always tell my wife, hey, Charlie Kirk did call me a couple of years ago, and here he is, this outstanding citizen. And like I was talking a while ago, I personally think he probably would have been one of our future Republican presidents, And
no question about it.
Yeah, great Christian, great leader, and he really had a leadership of the young people because they followed him and they believed in him because, like I said, he put reasonings to fact, and it made people wonder, hey, this guy, what he's saying is true, and it is true. You can't be that dumb sometimes.
And Marvin, you were inspired to post all of these different signs on your house dating back to really the beginning of the MAGA movement. And what
Yeah.
was the reasoning for that outside of the simple freedom of speech? Because that does beat out all those other rights. If we didn't have freedom of speech, really it all falls apart.
Yeah, my wife, we had put up some small Donald Trump signs around the house, and my wife's a little bitty woman, and I'm a big 6'3" character here, and they were taking them down and throwing them away. I said, and she goes, after about 2 or 3 times, I said, look, I got this. You know what I'm saying? So I went and ordered a big single sign, probably a 2 foot by 40 foot, and I hung it from my house. Trump 2020 or Trump 20, whenever it was going on. And I dropped it, and I'm like, then my heart started beating real fast. I said, my butt's in trouble now. I'm going to jail. But I hung it up, and they didn't say anything to me, and and it went on. And then come January, they wanted me to take it down because I started hanging some different signs, and saying some other things like Trump won, and it kind of hit off. And I had a lady by the name of Suzanne Harris. She's a local down there. You're not taking these signs down. I don't care who you are. And I'm like going, yes, ma'am, because she was a little older than I was. And I said, yeah, we'll keep them up. No problem, ma'am, no problem. And then all of a sudden I had some real harebrained ideas to hang bigger signs, and they got bigger. And the movement just went on. And, Trump's working for us right now. Our country seems to be thriving more. It's got some people that are fighting the deep state. They're working on him. And we got liberal judges that are fighting us. And, we all want to do something. You're like, damn, how'd they get in there? But they were put in there, and we can't get them out. But I feel like things are going to happen. A lot of this is going away because the Supreme Court is overruling a lot of their decisions. And I see us moving forward. I think we're going to get back to being the republic that we are. And I just see good things coming. And I'm excited about it, really and truly, deep down. I know we're going through some hard times. But, anything that's going to be great, you got to go through hard times sometimes.
You really do define the light at the end of the tunnel. And with this week starting a new term for the Supreme Court, they may be facing those big questions. But for you, at your beautiful home on 30A, the question I have is, how do the neighbors react to it in general? And then in turn, you've had a number of fines, if you don't mind me asking. Was that directly from Walton County or a specific judge?
Well, first of all, let's talk about my neighbors. My neighbors love me. I mean, I really have no problems. I've had a few issues with, some people riding by that, might have the liberal flag hanging out their ear or something. But it would be mainly young little girls or an old man that'd be crabby. And of course, we're a bunch of Georgia rednecks, so we've always got something to say back. And but I mean, the fines started in January, and the thing about it is, they would not let us pay the fine. Okay, the fines were building up. I had multi-billionaires that sold their business come to my door knocking. Hey man, I want to pay the fine for you. I had one guy drove up in a brand new Porsche, came in. I just sold my company in New Jersey. He said, I'm going to write you a check to pay for it. Where do I go pay? Of course, you make the phone call, and I argued with him. I said, look, we're not paying no fine. I'm not even going to think about paying the fine because I stayed positive about it the whole time. I said, look, if I pay the fine, then I'm done. I'm not paying a fine. I'm not going to get started. In a way, I wanted to pay the fine because if I paid the fine, if they would have let me pay the fine, I would have probably had a major lawsuit on their hands, and they would have had to pay me at the end. And that's probably why they didn't let me pay. They knew there was something going to come out of it because I told them in the very beginning when they come messing with me, I said, look, you don't know you woke up a giant. I don't like any problems, but when you want some, I'll give it to you. And that's just, my parents were school teachers, like I've told everybody. They always instilled to me, do not let nobody run over you. And of course, I'm a big guy, but I mean, you're not going to run over me very much. But I mean, I just stood up and said, look, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight the devil. And the devil was Walton County at the time. Where they're all saying, well, we're all Republicans down here. There wasn't. They wanted their sign ordinance to supersede my First Amendment right. And I already knew deep down that the Supreme Court had already ruled on this, and they had ruled on it. And like I said, was I willing to go that far? I was willing to go that far because I spent $64,000 in legal fees, which they wanted to negotiate that, which I got back $42,000, but we never paid a fine. But I did get my time to go speak to the city fathers. And there was a couple of them that stood up because there were some elections during those. When 5 years passed by, you have new city councilmen or county commissioners, and they stood up and they fought for me. And I went back and I told them, I thanked them, the ones that represented me. And at the end of the day, we won. And I got up to say my spiel, and I just told them, I said, look, Y'all need to change a lot of things. And have they done it? I seriously not. There's a lot of corruption in Walton County, even though some of them are Republican, because they're all dirty politicians in America across the board. That's what's wrong with our country now. It's the almighty dollar that gets in some of them's head or in their pocket, and it's controlling our country. And a lot of people have asked me to run in politics, and I really don't care to. But if Trump made a phone call and said, Marvin, I want you in politics, well, Marvin's going to be in politics. I don't know if I could stay up there very long because I probably, I'm going to let it all hang out and say what I feel. But you know what? If more Americans got up there and we didn't have the people that are deep rooted in America, our politics have been there for 40, 50 years. And you see these names back in the 80s, well, these same guys are still there. They're not doing anything for America but taking our money. And you look at their checking accounts, their accounts, but they have all the money, and that's what they've done. They've taken our money. We're now seeing it in the U.S. aid scandal, all the stuff that Elon Musk has brought up in the Doge, and it's incredible, man. And we've got to start somewhere.
There's no question about it. And that's what this MAGA movement really is about, inspiring a right-wing populism that really goes against establishment Republicans and Democrats, because as I analyzed the last 25 years as someone who's a deep fan of politics, of history, and great movements like you yourself have done to stand up for your property rights, to stand up for yourself and for your community in turn, it was the neoliberal and neocon agendas that were really burying America and bankrupting places like Detroit while they're bankrolling Beijing. And President Trump coming down that golden escalator to say, enough is enough. I could do this better.
Yeah. And it's like I'll tell everybody, I say, guys, it's our politicians that are doing this to us. They've done enough. It's time for it to end. The MAGA movement was basically the Republican Party. Well, the Republican Party, some of them didn't like Trump. You had your Bushes, you had your certain other people there, they wasn't backing him, and all of a sudden. But now it's just not only, the white conservative Republican male, female, whatnot. It's now your Latinos, it's your blacks, it's your Asians. They're all involved because what? 90% of your people are raised correctly in America. 90% are good citizens, want the best for America. They're now realizing this old Democratic Party that paid the money, that wants you to sit on your butt every day, not become anything, just to be a sorry individual. I don't mean it like it sounds, but I kind of do, because I get up every day. I'm older and I still get up. I go to work every day. I'm fighting for America. I'm fighting for my rights. And like I said, I'm not going to stop. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I still enjoy going to work because, like I said, people ask me, when are you going to retire? And I basically saying, look, man, when I die, I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what happens to 90% of our people anyway. You quit working, you die. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm enjoying things that I do, and I enjoy fighting. And I talk to a lot of people. I don't watch TV anymore, so I don't get corrupted by the news. And like I said, I do my little podcast with people. They talk to me, and I've learned so much more by getting on X every day for an hour and get my wife cuss me out when I'm on TikTok for maybe an hour, 3 hours, I don't know. But and I've learned so much because I've got so many opinions telling me. And when it starts to begin that over 95% of the stuff I'm hearing is all the same, you got to realize that's the truth. You know what I'm saying? Our CBS's, ABC's, even Fox News, they're corrupt as hell. They take the money, therefore they distribute what they want us to know. But we, the people, know better now because we're not ignorant. We have social media. People are putting it out there. We're now seeing a whole different picture of all the previous lies, like, landing on the damn moon. Is the earth really round? Is it flat? What do you believe? But that's part of it. That's who we are. All we want to know is the truth. And the truth will get us going to a different level, and we'll be a lot better for America. I think if we really had all the money that's been stolen from us, do you think we would have bad roads or our cities be in destruction like the Detroits, the Chicagos, the LA, San Francisco? This is pathetic. And New York's terrible. And now Atlanta, Georgia, which the state that I live in is now becoming terrible. It's just terrible, And then, like I said, we've had to go in. Trump's gone into Washington. They went, 10 or 20 days and no murders. And now he's in Memphis. And they've gone into, you saw what happened in Chicago and when the ICE agents come in, they got circled and the mayor didn't want the police going in and helping them. Well, we're all one in America. And even though, we have a lot of foreigners live here and our politicians are trying to basically give them their own rights, and they're not even citizens, and we're taking our hard-earned money and giving it to them because they have nobody else to vote for them because they run off their voter base. And me personally, I don't think in 6 years there'll be a Democratic Party. And maybe somebody can tell me I'm wrong, but I don't see. And look, I don't know if it's going to be a Republican Party. Maybe there's a magma movement. What are we going to be? Who are we going to be? It's time to get people what they want. I mean, basically, they keep us sick. They feed us the bad foods. And people know now. And that's what I really stand for, just fighting for everybody, we the people. And that's what I love, we the people.
It's really a coalition of the willing, Marvin, as you're explaining. And you really share something was special with President Trump because it's the opposite end of the state, but he was involved in a similar fining issue dating back to the late 80s, early 90s over the flagpole at Mar-a-Lago. And then he was able to actually make it taller as a result of putting a mound up together and actually lowering the flagpole, but putting that flagpole on top of that man-made mound to actually make the flag fly even larger than it did. So it's what I like to call, and what Charlie Kirk liked to call, anti-fragile people like you, like President Trump, where when the pressure comes on, you both double down, you get stronger, and you seem to have a very charitable way of going about it and almost seem at ease when the pressure hits. And that's something that's extraordinarily valuable to have.
Well, I've gone through a lot in my life. I mean, and because I'm in the real estate business or apartment business, I've seen a lot of people have tough times. I've had to go through tough times myself, because of the economy or is our interest rates really helping the people. I now realize that the interest rate that Jerome Powell set out there, he's really, in my eyes, the devil. But I mean, because we should have lower rates to help we the people. I mean, who are we here for? We're not here to screw over the economy. I mean, people need housing. People need places to stay. They're not there because our government is doing wrong things to us, and Trump recognizes that. And I feel like he's on a battle, and he's going to get there. You got to realize that. I don't think he's going to stop, but now he has a bigger battle because now he has an army brewing. We're here, but nobody's really activated us yet. And I think it's just a matter of time because I'm one of his soldiers, and I'll be one of the ones in the front because, like I said, we're going to take back our country, make America great again, and thrive to make not just me great, but make America great and make we the people great. And everybody is somebody. And I keep telling people, I said, we're all somebody. Why the hell are just these few people stealing all our damn money and putting us in a bad position? And people don't recognize that. And I said, look, man, we can do good. We can do good. I mean, it got so much to live for. And you've got all our young people that want to do so much better, and I just, like I said, we need more electricians, we need more plumbers, and everybody's, well, I don't want to be a plumber. But look, that's where the money's going. And Trump even told them that. And you're going to have kids out here that are multimillionaires and they're a damn plumber. I'm like, look, I wish I could have done that. You know what I'm saying? And because now I'm in the apartment business and my highest paid employees are probably are air conditioning guys. And they work for me, but I have to pay them because they're well worth it. Everybody's got to stay cool in the South,
Amen. That's the truth. Marvin Peavy, one of the great patriots in America. You can recognize his home down on 30A. It's a blast to go by. I'll honk the horn every time I go down visiting friends just to see if I can say hello. But yes, peacefully and patriotically, getting involved one person at a time. Thank you for joining us on The Voice of Reason.
Yeah.
Please come back.
And when you come down, make sure you stop in. We'll get out
yes,
and we'll take your picture out front and maybe let you jump off the third floor into the pool and get a big picture, man.
I love that. That'll be a blast. I think the viewers would like that too, to see their humble correspondent flying off of the third floor onto the pool.
Yeah,
so
there you go, brother. There you go, man.
Absolutely. God bless you, my friend.
Glad you had me on. I greatly appreciate it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed your interview.
Oh, likewise, sir. Come back soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you again to Marvin Peavy, a great American patriot who's full of passion and someone who is truly anti-fragile like President Trump. The more the heat turns up in the kitchen, the younger they seem to be, the more ready, willing, and able to peacefully and patriotically serve this country. It's an extraordinary thing to be. So let's ask that question. How can we make a difference at every single level? where we live in our neck of the woods to make America great again. And a preview, Marvin will be putting up some fun decor in regards to Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and the Palestinian Senator Chuck Schumer, the Minority Leader in the Senate. Also, he'll have some display for that on 30A, so we look forward to having Marvin again on The Voice of Reason. Speaking of the losers this week, I tend to reserve that later on in the show after the winners, but I think the clear losers have to be Hakeem Jeffries of New York City and Chuck Schumer of New York City as the Democrats continue their shutdown, lockdown games. And the funny thing about that is it seems as if the Democrats are becoming more and more like a regional party. Something that is quite sad to see as people are going to work as public employees and not receiving a paycheck as a result of their shutdown. So the winners this week have to be House Speaker Mike Johnson and Republican leadership for passing that clean CR out of the House to keep the government open for 7 weeks. But the Democrats in the Senate decided to filibuster, something I thought they were against, but we do know going back to the civil rights legislation, it was Republicans in the 1960s who passed that for Lyndon Johnson's signature on the presidential desk. But it was Democrats who attempted a filibuster led by Strom Thurmond and Robert Byrd in the 1960s. And as they say, the rest is history as a result of that. Now, this day in history, lots happening as October 9th, 1812, American forces capture 2 British ships during the War of 1812. In 1941, President Roosevelt approves the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. In 1970, the Khmer Republic established in Cambodia, dating back all the way to 1871. The Great Chicago Fires begin, destroying much of the city, and like Atlanta, both were able to rise like the phoenix from the ashes to become 2 of America's most important cities. And in 1986, on this day, October 9th, the musical The Phantom of the Opera opens in London, based on the French novel and the 1925 silent film that made the character so immensely famous. Andrew Lloyd Webber, a famed composer, puts together perhaps one of the most famous musicals post the golden era of musicals and more in that modern era. And it's still, I believe, the longest running musical on Broadway, closing its doors just last year. Personally, one of my favorites, an amazing story of love, rejection, fear, and anger, and really amazingly composed music and what that means in our lifetime. So something, if you have not seen the story, I recommend going and watching because it will pull on your heartstrings. Something that's quite special. Well, Thursday night means it's the voice of reason, whether it's politics, music, to sports, politics, punchlines, just a ton of different things, including that classic Western charm. Be sure to tune in with us every Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and I make sure it's at that time so you can still catch your Thursday night football in this fall season. Again, if you wish to opine, feel free to write at feedback@rsbn.tv. For all of my colleagues right here at the right side of history, RSBN and the Voice of Reason, I'm your humble correspondent, Robert McNeily. We'll see you next week on VOR.